Well, let me just say a thing about carbon. In fact, long chains of carbon just happen to be one of the most abundant features in the formation of stars and the supernova that create them. So, I'll try to keep moving here by discussing where does this awareness, consciousness, or tightly regulated psychedelic experience come from. Just as I posed in the introduction to this presentation, what do we and ET have in common? I answered with matter, life, and consciousness, and I defined life as matter that chooses and consciousness as life that remembers. So, where does life as an ability to choose come from? And where does consciousness as an ability of life to remember come from? This is where we have to look at the quantum state. We have the most recent work of Sir Roger Penrose, co-recipient of the Wolf Prize in Physics for his work with Stephen Hawking. He shared his research and findings in a recent YouTube video he presented to Google, of all places, on the topic of artificial intelligence. You can Google Roger Penrose consciousness to find it. Go to YouTube, type in Roger Penrose consciousness, and you will find his wonderful, wonderful presentation. His theory, orchestrated objective reduction, suggests that consciousness itself may operate at the quantum level and do so as a result of tiny carbon microtubules. At the quantum level, where Newtonian physics and general relativity break down, we find an indeterminate state where things happen and don't happen. And this can happen only in a state of superconductivity and at a very small scale. It occurs at a temperature where resistance in a metal drops to zero as measured in ohms, and Penrose thinks we might have found it in studying single lattice A microtubules, which are 25 nanometer tubes arranged in a hexagonal lattice. This is what they roughly look like. They resemble the tubes you can make with those office toy magnets called buckyballs. They are carbon nanotubules that seem to click together just as well as toy buckyballs, but they do so with properties that are very unusual. Remember, I said carbon, long chains of carbon, as a matter of fact, are known to be a fundamental ingredient in the cosmos present at the formation of every star, which in turn blows out into nebulae that coalesce into planets. Silicon is in abundance too, but so are hydrogen and oxygen, which form water as the basis for life. The idea is that the uncertainty principle at the quantum level is alive and well operating in our own brains. It is here in these microscopic tubules that consciousness may reside in our brain. It is not such that our brain causes our mind to be aware of itself, or that our mind causes what happens in our brain, but there is what Penrose calls a non-computable activity, something indeterminate, that occurs when matter gets together to form life. One criticism against this model is that superconductivity, unfortunately, can only happen at extremely cold temperatures. In other words, our brains are much too warm a place for this to happen. Well, apparently, there is new research that became quickly patented that superconductivity actually happens in these lattice A microtubules. Penrose discusses this in his lecture, which incidentally are nicely done with old-fashioned color marker drawings on overhead transparencies, just like the good old days, which apparently Google couldn't manage to work very well with Penrose, let me say. Anyway, this idea, which Google was asking Penrose to talk about, was put on with the idea of exploring artificial intelligence. That is, his ideas would lead many to believe that consciousness is something we should be able to create in a lab. In which case, if aliens figured this out, then we should really be afraid of the machines in the Matrix. But if Penrose is right, then aliens could just as easily be just like us, having developed the potential for extrasensory and paranormal skills as a result of greater development and awareness as a physiological organism with an ability to know how to harness and manipulate themselves, how they are seen, and their ability to cause altered states in other life forms. Or, given their advancements in technology, perhaps they have developed beyond the need for physical bodies and somehow figured out to live with little need for them. but they somehow supplement some, if not all of themselves, with physical technology they created using their knowledge of orchestrated objective reduction. In any case, we're talking about time travelers, interdimensional beings, and all the rest that they might have been able to figure out. What I'm saying is that aliens, although I have not seen one, are probably real. I put real in quotes here because they could take on any and all the forms and characteristics that are reported from sightings and encounters that seem wholly unreal. The problem, I suggest, is that we either haven't developed the brain capacity or technology to fully see them, nor have we understood how to master the phenomenon known as ESP. Call it interference, if you will. This leads me to believe there are at least two options. One is put forth by the futurist Ray Kurzweil along the lines of understanding technology and follows the exponential growth of computers in Moore's law. The interest in this movement is called Transhumanism, which has an aim to enhance human abilities beyond our need for physical bodies and cognition to the point the universe wakes up with consciousness in the form of patterns and energy. This is an outward method and kind of a bionic system like the $6 Million Man, Steve Austin, again, the good old days. The other option is a more traditional offering described by Eastern spiritual traditions and some in the West, and is more consistent with the benevolent messages somehow received by spirit channelers. It is the goal of nirvana by way of physiological coherence, or in this case without residue, where you just poof out of existence, I guess. This idea has an end goal of enlightenment or waking up also that is achieved by spiritual inquiry and practice. It is more of an inward method. So here's option one, the transhumanism goal put forth by Kurzweil. He sees evolution or development in 6 epochs, from physics to chemistry in Epoch 1, to biological information in the form of DNA in Epoch 2, to the development of brains and brain systems in Epoch 3, which we already have, more or less, to the development of technology, computers, and computer design in Epoch 4, to where we are now at Epoch 5, where we're beginning to merge technology with biological systems at an exponential rate. Finally, in Epoch 6, where Kurzweil sees us going apparently by the end of 2030, this is where human intelligence, having long since mastered biology itself, spreads throughout the universe. So, we're starting to work on cyborg, bionics, and Steve Austin and the $6 Million Man, and pretty soon we're going to merge with machines to the point we humans are unrecognizable. Again, this is option one. And by the way, the Dalai Lama seems to think this is either a good idea, or it might be his way of joking that consciousness in life can never be computable, as Roger Penrose says. At any rate, the Dalai Lama says, I think that one day the part of our brain which brings feelings should be removed. Then we should be like robots, and ourselves become part machines. That would be good, actually. That would be super. Hard to tell if the Dalai Lama is serious here or not, but part of me thinks he is being serious. So, we have option one, which involves focusing our efforts and energy on the development of our material understanding of the universe.